Johnson, and we welcome you to our Proctors History Series, sponsored by the Proctors Historical Committee. The date of this taping is May 23rd, and our guest today is Keith Schmitt, who's a wonderful employee of Proctors. And Keith, welcome.
Thanks.
We're so glad you're here because we hear you have many good stories to tell.
Well, I hope I can remember a few.
First of all, just to set the stage a little bit, you notice my words are perfectly chosen for you. Tell me your title and what exactly you do for Proctors.
Well, my title is the production manager, and I refer to myself most times as the hat rack.
Now,
because
what does that
I end up having to wear many hats. So anything from, advancing the show technically to making sure artists have accommodations, ground transportation, catering, any rental equipment we need, communicating information about labor needs, all the technical information. So it's a mix of all those different things.
So when do you get started working on a show? Are you part of the contract review team that looks at their original requests?
I see some of it, yeah, but Dan Sheehan does most of that on the contract level, and then I'll start looking at just making sure they book it, and then it's my job to make sure it gets on stage. It's pretty much the easy way to...
So whatever they book, you have to do. Well, now, I saw you last week with the Proctors van, and you were sorting out some groceries. What's all that about?
That was my shopper's hat that I was wearing that day. With the main contract is something called the technical rider, and that lists all of the things that you need to do to make the show happen. And one of those things is stocking the dressing rooms. And for the show like John Legend, they're living in other buses. There's a whole shopping list for the buses, which fortunately I didn't have to get into, but there's 15, 20 people that are traveling in the entourage and have some specific needs for the dressing room. So spent a couple of evenings out shopping.
So with John Legend, what would be some of the other things you would have had to do when a star comes in like that?
Well, this was actually one of those really great times where the show has actually got the #1 song in the country and sold out and can have rabid fans. So one of the things we had to pay close attention to was security needs, because you have folks trying to poke in doors and get access to where they're not supposed to. So one of the fun things we did was I actually got a chance to see SPAC. I'm never here in the summertime because I have a gig in the other part of the state. So it was my first time to actually really go to SPAC. We borrowed some bicycle rack, which is a way of putting up a sort of a temporary wall to keep people out of where they shouldn't be. So we bicycle racked the driveway and backstage doors. So that was just,
So you had to think that up as a security idea, or did you? How did
well,
you
it's a standard practice, but we don't usually have a need for that, so we don't have that stuff on hand. So it's going out, beg, borrowing, and stealing. It's another one of the hats you get to wear.
Do we beg, borrow, and steal a lot of things for our shows?
We've got a lot of friends, so we do a lot of borrowing, trading, yeah.
And vice versa, I'm sure.
Sure. Yep.
So the artistic community is kind of a group of people that work together because.
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate to have things like Union College and Schenectady County Community College, with for shows like let's say Johnny Mathis and a couple of shows where we have a large music element. There are times where we don't have enough percussion equipment to do what they need, so jump in the van and head over to SCCC and borrow a vibraphone or marimba or something that we might not have. So
that's
folks
really
are helpful that way.
So what's the difference between a one-person show and a whole Broadway show from your perspective?
Well, it depends on what the needs are. I mean, one-person show can be as demanding as a Broadway show. I mean, you've got something like Kristen Chenoweth with not needy, but it's a serious show. So there's some serious needs, and usually comes down just to the number of trucks. You go from some folks who show up in a car to something like Phantom that's coming in next week with 16 trucks.
And have we got our ceiling all ready for them?
We have our holes made. We should be getting the sign-off letter from the structural engineer this afternoon. And we have our new door. And there's some pieces that are so big that the door's not, or actually they can't make the swing into the crossover. I mean, they come off the truck, they're like 6.5 feet wide, 24 feet long. You know, they can't make the door, or they come off straight off the truck. They can't make the turn in the crossover. So we've had to actually, the old gray double door that we have that wouldn't opened up on the Stratton Plaza, that's now a 10-foot wide roll-up door, or 8-foot wide roll-up door. So.
This Phantom has had a lot to do with our construction over time because we had to change the structure when we expanded the stage.
Well,
because
actually,
of the
they
Phantom.
referred to that as phantomizing the building. So rather, in addition to expanding the building, we phantomized it. And
That doesn't mean we have a Phantom living here, does it?
not that I'm aware of. But pretty much, if you build it back in the day when it was designed to accommodate that touring version of Phantom, then pretty much anything that followed it used a lot of the holes and rigging points. So if you were phantomized, you were set and ready to be able to do just about anything
So
that was
we've
out on the
been
road.
re-phantomized for this new
Yeah,
show.
re-phantomized, just a couple more holes. It's always more holes, you know, because we did a lot of new steel and front of house rigging holes to do the chandelier and front of house trussing and things like that for Phantom. But then Wicked came along and with that huge proscenium with the dragon, and a couple more holes had to get added, and so really close. Needed 2 more holes to make the new chandelier work for this
So
one.
I know this isn't your job, but how do you get up to those holes?
Back through the follow spot booth, and then there's a ladder that you climb up into the ceiling, and then it's just there's a whole catwalk system
So
up over top.
over the ceiling of the theater that people see, there's a plenum of some type
Yeah, there's it's a huge open space, and
with walkways in it.
some walkways. Yeah, well, there's some walkways. There's a fair amount of free climbing involved to get to where those rigging points have to happen.
Well, I'm glad it's all done.
And
we're ready.
Well, it's not all done. I mean, the hole's there, so now the real work can get started.
Okay, so tell me about some of the shows that you thought were particularly interesting from your job point of view.
Interesting in a good way, or interesting in a bad way.
Either way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, actually, some of the fun ones, it's always working with Bill Cosby's always great. I've only worked with him once here, but I've worked at my other venue where I'm at in the summer, it's probably 6 or 7 times. Some folks find him, well, he is a little bit of a challenge, but it's always something interesting. And
Is he a challenge because of his personality, or?
he's wicked smart, so you just have to be on all the time. You know, he's a huge sports fan, so he's got to have his TV, and he's got to know what sports are going to, what games are going to be on that day, and so this is the first thing in the door is, where's the remote control, because I want to find out what's on.
Because I remember a long time ago, probably before you were even here, we had to get a TV and get cable into the building.
Well, we already
for
have,
him.
but now we have
wireless and
it's all,
everything.
well, we have cable running in the building. Thank you, Time Warner, and so we can get him hooked up.
Does he have any special dietary requests?
Well, a lot of them do. His are pretty simple. It's, there's a very specific brand of water that he wants, which you have to sort of get shipped in from some godforsaken part of the country. Not godforsaken, but, somewhere in Missouri.
So
That's the hard part.
How long ahead would you have to start working on a show like that had a special request?
Most shows I look at 1 month out, and it's almost uncanny that a lot of the shows I will get a phone call like that day from the show. Actually we're trading emails, sort of, back and forth without knowing. It's so usually a month out for the nuts and bolts, but somewhat earlier if certain transportation is involved, airfare, stuff like that. Just want to get banged up early on. And looking at accommodations, especially with, in fact, the Holiday Inn's closed until the first of the year, so it can be a challenge. But usually a month out, and then it gets much more Detailed 2 weeks out.
So tell me about some other shows that you thought were unique and interesting.
Well, actually the most fun I had was last year with Arturo Sandoval. And they were down in Philly the night before, and I guess Arturo was pretty tired, and he needed to get some sleep, so they got a late start. Ran into traffic, you know, one thing led to another, snowballed, and we were supposed to have a sound check starting at 4 o'clock, and I still hadn't heard from anybody. 5:45, 6
You
o'clock.
hadn't heard anything from them?
Oh, well, I heard earlier on that they were going to be running late. They got the rental cars late, and there were some traffic problems, so I thought maybe an hour late would still be okay, you know. Because I've worked with Arturo and his guy before, so, you know, and he's been to the venues, but they're fairly familiar with the place. And our house crew is dynamite. I mean, it can dial stuff up, and, you know, we can deal with late really well here. But this got to be really late. And 6 o'clock, the tour manager calls me, and, you know, I said, "Where are you guys at?" "Well, we just pulled up to the hotel. I got a big problem. Can you meet me over here with the van? We got to, you know, sort some things out." So I get over there. Turns out that the drummer is experiencing chest pains, and he's wanting to take him to the doctor. And I'm like, "Well, you're the sound man. Why don't you go see what you can do to get a sound check started, and I'll take the guy to the hospital, because if it's the chest pains,
Can't fool
we
around.
got to go, you know." And it's 6 o'clock, and we have a show at 8, so let's do that. So I'm offering to take him to the hospital, and next thing I know, I've got a van full of musicians. And I'm like, "So what's going on?" He goes, "Well, he's going to the hospital, but we're all going with him." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, we're Cubanos. We travel together." I'm like, okay, so Arturo's piled in the car, and off we go to the hospital. You know, go to the ER. The first thing I do is do a quick EKG to make sure he's not having a cardiac event, and that's, you know, he's okay. But we're still waiting for doctors, et cetera. I'm like, "Arturo, it's now 6:30. I don't think this guy's going to make the show. Should I be calling our music contractor and see if I can find a drummer?" So another hat, find a drummer. So, call the music contractor up, see who he can, you know, spin up on. I think it was a Friday, so.
A lot of people were working.
Yeah. But he found somebody, really, really, actually well-known drummer in the region, who offered to step in. And so now look over, and here's Arturo and the band taking a nap, waiting for the doctor to show up. It was like probably 20 till 7 before we left the hospital, at which point, or 20 till 8, which, you know, when he finally felt comfortable with seeing that he was taken care of, was going to be seen, handed him off, and it's like, okay, you know. So he starts, you know, warming up with these small little mechanism he uses to warm up before the show, and got on the stage at 10 after 8. Introduced him to the drummer. The sound check's already started. Bass player's trying to talk the drummer through, you know, what's going to happen. And then did a show. Went out. First thing he did was apologize to the audience because he hates starting late. We didn't start till almost quarter after, and explained to the audience what was happening, and did the show. I mean, I don't think he got a swig of water before he got on stage from the time he left.
So if the audience hadn't been told by him, they never would have really known what happened.
I think they would have known, because the drummer had a lot of friends in the house, because as soon as he found out he was playing for Arturo, I think the word got out, and because when he was introduced, there was pretty significant cheer from the audience. So there were
that was pulled off pretty fast, too.
Yeah. And then we got the show over, and I was like, "So Bruce, should I take Arturo back to the hospital and go pick up the drummer, because see how he's doing?" And so they wrapped up, you know, Bruce wrapped up, Bruce with the show, not our Bruce, wrapped up the show, and headed back to the hospital and tried to get Arturo some dinner, and because he hadn't had anything to eat yet, and it was approaching midnight. And so we kept striking out places. The lines were really, really long, and by the time we finally pulled up to a place that looked like we could grab something and go, the phone rang, and it was the drummer saying they were just about to release him. So we ended up back at the hospital in the parking lot. Gets another phone call. Now he's got all this paperwork to do, and so Arturo's like, I'm just going to stay out here. And we just had a great conversation while he smoked his cigar in the parking lot, you know. And his manager called to let him know. I got the scoop that he was going to be doing the 4th of July with Barbra Streisand,
Wow.
at the Hollywood Bowl, and I learned at that point that he was also had composed the music for The Lone Ranger, the film that just came out last year. So it was just great having that much time with him on that kind of on that level, and just
That's
relaxed.
a pretty unbelievable story. I mean, how could all that happen in one night?
Went and got the drummer, and then we're heading back to the hotel, and coming down Knott Terrace, and stopped the traffic light at Denny's, and he just looks at me and goes, "Keith, Denny's, please, please, please."
This is in the middle of the night.
This is like 12:30, quarter to 1 at this point. And pull into the Denny's, and drummer said, "I'm buying," so we went in and had breakfast.
Well, that was,
So it was.
and you collapsed after that, or you kind of a night owl?
I'm a night owl, yeah. But some pretty long days.
Yes, I would say, because you have to start and go till the very end.
Right, first in, last out. It's usually it's
I think you like
how
it
it
though,
goes for those
don't you?
guys. Well, yeah, it's to a point. You know, when we start having these one-offs, 5 or 6 of them in a row, it's that gets to be pretty tough.
Have you noticed in your own life that the way Proctors is booking is much more demanding on you because of the more shows we seem to be having?
It's like the luck of the draw, because you can try to plan it and then you can't. So it comes in waves. They try, but there's like this weekend with the dance recitals. We've got, the guys have a rental coming in here on a dance recital on Sunday. That gets done at 4:30. We've got to do a complete, or they've got to do a complete strip to get ready for Phantom. So we're probably going to have 12, 15 guys working to all the lights, all the masking has to come down, audio clusters have to come down, Marty has to go kick. Well, we have 85 line sets on the stage. On 6-inch centers, you think, perfect, what more do you need? Well, a show like Phantom, things have to be exactly where they need to be. So Marty's going to be up there with a wrench and sliding pulleys around to have these battens land exactly where they need to land. So that's another part of what's going to...
Very precise work.
Very, yeah.
And people watching the show, I'm sure, have no idea the extent
It's magic.
of all that work.
Just comes in like that.
Well, and Phantom comes in quite a bit ahead too, don't they? At least part of their crew.
Well, actually, we're gonna do the strip on Sunday night. Probably finish that about 10 o'clock. And then the 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday, we do what's called the layout. And in addition to using our battens, they'll put up somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 chain motors to lift scenery, lighting, and audio. And what they'll do for the first hour is just map out on the floor where all of those motors are going to go, and then come in with a laser and point up, and so the guys on the grid can find out where all that rigging's got to go so the motors can hang. And then we'll work, then the actual load-in will start at 9 a.m. And we'll probably have 50 guys working.
So during
And
a
we'll go
Phantom,
till 11 o'clock on Monday.
are you working on the actual putting the scenery, all the lights and technical stuff together, or are you more dealing with
I
making
pretty
sure
much
they
get
eat
them
and-
what they need, and then I get out of the way.
Okay.
So
And
I'm,
you're
I'm,
there
I'm there
in
for
case
I'm,
something
I'm there
comes
for
up.
support. What'll happen on Monday as well is you get pretty much a business moving in to the venue. You've got divide it up this way. You've got the head carpenter, who is basically making sure the physical show gets in the door and up and make sure it runs and is staffed and crewed and that whole thing works. You've got the production stage manager, who is responsible for the artistic side of everything. I mean, he's making sure that all the actors, musicians, and everybody knows what they're doing, their call times, who's in the show, who's out of the show, that, artistically it looks good. And then you've got the company manager, who's dealing with all the administrative side of things. So I work with those three people to make sure they get everything that they need. So anywhere from, you know, internet access in the dressing rooms to making sure the showers work, you know, to do we have a rehearsal space for the local musicians to rehearse on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, and does the electrician have all the CO2 he needs to do his theatrical effects, you know, so. And if I get all that, then I'm just basically there to make sure there aren't any other needs. Doors are open, everybody's, you know, where they're supposed to be, and hopefully there's no emergencies or any problems. And then when we get towards the end of the show, I'll help with settlement, because the whole thing financially has to be wrapped up before the truck doors close that night. So we're, you know, the box office is bringing reports. I'm getting labor bills, any bills for, you know, rentals, catering, all like that.
So we're basically getting the money that we've received, the ticket money, and then the bills we've received and balancing them off
Right.
according to whatever the contractual agreement is.
Right.
And then you sit down and checks pass hands at that night? Is that?
Right. Everybody.
Every
There's
single
a lot
night?
of no. It happens. It happens once, usually at
Okay.
the end of the run. So it happen. You know, it could be the end of a one-nighter. It could be the end of a 2-week run.
And we pay people usually after they perform?
Depends on the contract. They're all a little different. Some want deposits, some don't. Generally, it's show like a Broadway show will be a guaranteed check before the show starts, and then there's a percentage based on net after all the expenses. So there's a bit of number crunching happening to make all that work.
Does it make any difference to you whether the show has been here before, or are the problems new, or the?
Well, what's nice is when we've allowed, especially with the Broadway shows where we have the same company managers come in, because we've got a fairly proprietary box office system that's not it's a little, it's different than what a lot of folks are used to working with out there. So if they've been here before, it makes the settlement so much easier for the box office and for themselves. And it's just nice working with the same people and over and over again, especially with Broadway shows. We're seeing this, a lot of the same folks once or twice a year.
So are there any other shows you'd like to talk about, that experiences you've had? Or are you keeping them to yourself?
No, we've had some interesting ones. I've actually had a couple of times where folks have refused to go on stage, which is
So
not a
you
lot of
become
fun.
a psychiatrist at that point?
No,
something
I
different.
was gonna, yeah. We had, I'm not even going to mention her name, because I only mention names of the people that I had a good experience with. I'm not even going to talk about
Very wise of you.
the folks that, yeah. And this one, and it was kind of our fault, but it wasn't a great day to start with, and it was issues with the marquee. So I'm out there on a ladder fixing things.
Like who's first on the marquee or something?
Well, yeah.
Like
We
that?
actually, I think we still had Lion King up there, the banners and things, and her name was like that compared to Lion King, so there were problems with that. So then I had on my list that the pit was sold, so we had the pit all seated, but somehow it didn't get sold online or on the box office. So
You
a
had
couple minutes to
find people-
showtime, there's 52 empty seats, or 55 empty seats in the orchestra pit, and the performer didn't want to go on in front of an empty orchestra pit.
So what, did you start moving people?
Well, Cindy went and grabbed all the volunteers, and we just filled up the...
They volunteered to sit in the pit?
Yes, they did. We volunteered them to sit in the pit.
Fortunately, there were only 52 seats, or something like that.
So it was, mostly filled.
So you really do everything.
Yeah, and actually, another Broadway musical, and I'm not going to mention that one. We had some problems in the basement that I was aware of, but I didn't realize it was affecting the pit orchestra. And I thought we had solved it, but nobody from the pit orchestra ever got to me and said it was a serious problem. So it was intermission, during a sold-out show, and the music director was refusing to play Act Two.
That would
So
be
that-
not too good.
No, that's you know, that's always a great
So
feeling.
was it possible to adjudicate that?
We solved it, and then it was a thunder run to Lowe's, and never. I just got really creative in the 2 hours between shows, and somehow figured out a way to pull fresh air into the space where these folks were, and throw up some tarping, and made it work.
So you learned to do a lot of interesting fixes on things, temporary and permanent, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. If anybody ever thinks that this is a glamorous business, needs their head examined.
Pretty
Yes.
practical.
Yeah.
So I don't think many people know that we have, underneath Proctors, we have a giant sewer, not a sanitary sewer, it's a overflow water sewer that goes to the river called the Cowhorn Creek. And then we have other sewers that have backed up over the years, that we're kind of in the downhill end of them.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Have you been involved in some of those?
Oh, yeah. I've sacrificed several pairs of shoes to that. One morning I came in, actually that was before they fixed the sewer, and came in one morning and there was, I affectionately call it poo water, all over the loading dock, and found that just...
It had risen.
It had risen, yes, just before the laundry person came in to start laundry that morning, and had that washing machine gotten to the rinse cycle, would have had sudsy water all over the dock. But we got that stopped, and it was just like old times. I've known Philip for 30 years, and I called him, and he came flying in, and we were out there with squeegees pushing water out to the drain, and then we got a local contractor come in and clean up, and it was actually dried and smelling better than before by the time the folks showed up for the matinee that afternoon.
And that problem has now been fixed?
That's been fixed. But then we've had a couple of other problems, and there's a small bathroom right next to the loading dock, and it was backing up, and assumed it was just that one toilet. So we're telling everybody, well, guys, just go upstairs because there's another bathroom upstairs. We didn't realize that the problem was between the toilet and the outside line. So everybody goes upstairs, and what goes up must come down. And it was a lovely
So that's some of
theatrical
our-
effect, and which spilled out onto the loading dock in the middle of the Young Frankenstein loadout.
So that isn't even the old plumbing in this building, because is that new or
That
old?
was new, and something, I don't know.
Happened between the street?
Yeah, but, you
Yeah.
know,
Between us and the street.
plumber came in and actually got it fixed before we left, but not before we all had to, wanted to throw our shoes away.
So this job takes a lot of shoes, hey?
Yeah, it can, it can.
I don't,
The fun, it almost never stops.
well, you know, you handle it pretty well, I'd say.
Well, you gotta have a sense of humor, or you would probably just implode or explode, one or the other.
Right. Was there any other show you wanted to mention, good or bad?
Check my list.
Yeah, 'cause-
I thought I made. Oh, then we have fun the day of Philip's 10th anniversary. Remember that one?
yes.
Went up and had champagne and cake in the offices. And so whenever I have a show, nope, no champagne for me, because you never know. And we go downstairs, and that was when the sound console died for Jersey Boys that afternoon.
Oh,
And we had a
yes.
sold-out show.
I remember it because you were doing something different, but what I was doing is reticketing people for other shows. And we were on the phone receiving phone calls, and every single person that worked for Proctors was working on that. And I think, considering the magnitude of it, it was really handled pretty well.
Yes, it did. If that had been Book of Mormon, where there were no other seats available, we'd have been in trouble. But being
Yeah.
able to have some flexibility to reseat folks, that
Do you want to
That
kind of
worked out.
explain what happened from a sort of technical point of view?
Well, the sound console just kept
It
crashing.
was their sound
Their sound
console that
console, yeah.
came in town with them.
And there were parts of that system that were driving maybe some automation, but so it wasn't just audio. There were other elements involved. It eventually found out that it was a bad cable harness and was short-circuiting and causing the computer to want to reboot the brain that was running the sound console. So, but unfortunately, it wasn't easy to see that, and they had replaced the sound console thinking that was the issue, and all along it was actually traced to a bad cable.
And so they had another
So they had
one coming up?
they had another console
was a
trucked up
matinee,
from New York
wasn't
City,
it?
yeah,
So,
that afternoon, and it got there at like 6:30, and
for the 8
put in the
o'clock
place
or
for an 8
7
o'clock
o'clock
show.
show.
8 o'clock show, yeah.
That was very stressful for all, and I'm sure for the show as well. So have we exhausted your list?
There's, I could go on
Forever?
forever.
I can give you one more if you want.
Sure. Oh, actually, do you have any?
Stories?
Remind
well,
me, or
we-
from it's always a different perspective from the rear. So I don't know if there's anything from out front that generated questions or.
I can't think of anything right at the moment. We have some other people in the room, so say.
Oh, we do. Actually, one of my another favorite was Penn and Teller, and they always do a meet and greet. They just are super accessible to their audience. I'm like, okay, well, how is this going to work in the arcade? Because we've had a couple of sort of train wrecks when we did Blast. The way that they end the show is the horn section comes out, and stands in the lobby. Well, standing in the lobby with the horn section, in the arcade, nobody got out of the building. That took a while. So I was imagining a nightmare with Penn and Teller, but it was a beautiful night. It was in May, and they just took it outside. And there had to be 800 people in Stratton Plaza, and they were out there for a good 45 minutes, just
And does
saying
their
hello to the
management
fans.
get nervous when they do things like that?
They do it all the time, so
So they're used to it.
pretty much used to it. Yeah.
And do we have any special security requirements when something like that happens?
Only if they're asking us, and we usually have at least one person, detailed to be a security person in front of house. So floating, and they're used to dealing with it.
Okay, well, I can
pretty
see
surprised.
you have a very exciting life. Now, you're about to leave Proctors, and I don't mean just, you work in 2 different places, and you have a different job in the summer. Tell us what you do.
I'm the manager of the amphitheater at the Chautauqua Institution, and this will be my 31st season out there. We have a 9-week season that starts at the end of June. Usually the second week in June, I'm out there starting the prep work. So with Phantom coming down on Sunday, and looks like close to a 22-hour loadout. I'm not going to be leaving till Tuesday, and then starting Wednesday, so starting a couple of days late.
And you have about a 6-hour drive to get there,
6-hour drive, yeah.
even with jets.
Yeah.
So that's,
And a new fuel pump, because last week, I went out last weekend to try to knock out a couple of days in the office, since I'm starting late, and my car died west of Corning, so got to spend an evening in the thriving metropolis of Painted Post.
nice
and then
town.
Off onto Chautauqua.
I've always wondered what that town would be like, and but
I just know what
You
the
wish you
Ramada looks
didn't.
like, so that's about as far as I got without a car.
so, well, you have a very exciting life, and I know that your flexibility and interest in doing this is great, and we really appreciate your taking the time today to talk to us. For those of you who are watching, we just would like to remind you we've been talking to Keith Schmitt, who's the production coordinator at Proctors. I'm Karen Johnson. This is a project of the Schenectady Historical Committee, and it is May 23rd, 2014, and we appreciate your watching the show.